Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Measure the World, a podcast produced by scientists for scientists.
We are trying to cover in the very last aspect of our research is going to be look at how much acceptance of different technologies we are using. Even though we are trying to develop different models, different ways to save irrigation water or different ways to model different things, but at the very end it comes out at the adoption, how much ease it can be come with the adoption. So we're going to be trying to conduct a surveys and see what are the complications they see in the adoption of these ones, what are the big questions they come across like while adopting these technologies, what are the drawbacks they feel like in using all those technologies. And that's when it comes with the machine learning and we can make it more simpler for them.
That's just a small taste of what we have in store for you today. We Measure the World explores interesting environmental research trends, how scientists are solving research issues, and what tools are helping them better understand measurements across the entire soil-plant atmosphere continuum.
Tejinder Singh is a PhD candidate in plant science at Utah State University, and he received his master's in agronomy from Punjab Agricultural University in India. With a research focus on soil hydraulics, evapotranspiration modeling, and sustainable irrigation practices, Tejinder combines field-based experimentation with advanced sensor technologies to tackle water scarcity in agriculture. Originally from a farming background in Punjab, India, Tejinder has been working to translate cutting-edge science into real-world solutions for growers in arid and semi-arid regions. He is also a member of the first cohort of recipients of the Gaylon Campbell Fellowship, awarded by Meter Group, for innovation in environmental measurement. And he's here today to talk to us about his work spanning the development of a soil moisture-based evapotranspiration model for estimating actual evapotranspiration, evaluating soil amendments to improve infiltration, and assessing social adoption of precision water management tools. So, Tejinder, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brad, for having me.
No problem. All right. So as we do with all of our guests, can you start by telling us a bit about your journey and your background? So what inspired you to pursue a PhD in plant science and agronomy, and how did you end up at Utah State University?
Yeah, sure. As you did mention, like coming from a farming background, I got to involve in all the different farm activities and all the operations, but I wasn't that good in all of them. But I tried to continue getting involved in all of activities. But then I did my schooling from my hometown. Then I moved to Khalsa College, Amritsar, from where I got my Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture honors. And from there onwards, I tried to get into the agronomy. That was my main goal at the time. And then I got into the Punjab Agricultural University, Ludhiana, where I got my master's in agronomy, and kind of building upon all the different events like developing kitchen garden models during my undergrad, looking at the different aspect of herbicide resistant weeds during my research, and then kind of building into different production system. I kind of got into a PhD at Utah State, and I'm doing my PhD with Matt Yost in plant science department. Yeah.
And we'll dig into a lot more of what you're doing there here in a second. Yeah. Any experiences that you had growing up that kind of informed what you wanted to study?
I want to be honest here. As a kid, I never expected to be getting that much involved in agriculture because I was a bit careless. So when I do some kind of operations at field, I used to mess around some of the stuff, like a bit of obligations, but I try to cop up with all of them, and then getting into like what I was expecting to be doing, what I should be doing. I always try to, apart from doing those, I always try to get into other jobs rather than directly doing all those operations I need to do. But yeah, the mainly basic crop production kind of motivated me to get into agronomy, and kind of it built my interest in agriculture.
Your research is quite broad. looking into soil amendments and evapotranspiration and deep percolation and groundwater recharge, and even helping farmers adopt new technologies.
Yeah.
So how do all of these elements tie together under the larger umbrella of improving water use efficiency and what you're hoping to do with that?
Yeah. Before getting deep into the research, I just want to give a kind of quick picture, like how we got involved into all the different aspects of the research. So what we are trying to do in Utah is mostly conserving water. And it's a big issue in Utah. Like it's one of the most driest places on earth. And most of the water being used in Utah is used by agriculture. So we are trying to conserve water and improve the water use efficiency of the different systems we already have in Utah. So how we are trying to conserve it all revolve around the agriculture water balance. So it's just a balance between all the inputs we have and all the outputs we got. So in inputs, we usually consider like irrigation, application we are applying, precipitation in the form of rain or snow we are getting into the soil. And in output, we usually consider around evapotranspiration. Some of the water gets stored into the soil. Some of the water get percolated below the crop root zone, and which finally ends up in a groundwater. But some of the water usually get run off from the soil surface. The water running off from the soil surface is usually because of the poor infiltration we are getting. That is we usually say like the water we are applying just immediately entering into the soil, and the rest of the water goes with the runoff in the form of runoff. And that is usually because of the poor infiltration, which we usually explain in a way like immediate entry of water into the soil. And my kind of research revolve around mostly how water moves in soil, kind of in plant and also in the atmosphere. So complete soil plant atmosphere continuum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we like to hear at Meter. We're exploring the whole soil plant atmosphere continuum.
Yeah.
So one of the key aspects of that is dealing with infiltration, like you mentioned. So what specifically are you trying to do to measure infiltration and to improve, or at least help improve in some ways, that kind of water infiltration into the soil?
So with the infiltration, like there could be many different reasons with the poor infiltration in the soil. Like it can be due to the soil compaction, it can be due to the hydrophobicity of the soil, it can be due to the sodicity in the soil, excess of sodium in the soil, and it can also be due to all different soil texture and different factors. In one of our study, we are trying to look at the sodicity, how it's impacting, because if we get a lot of sodium in the soil, it do disperse the soil and create a kind of micropores and then restrict the water movement. So we are trying to apply different amendments like gypsum, compost, elemental sulfur, humate, and trying to look how they're going to be improving the infiltration. But apart from that, we are also looking at the hydrophobic soils. Like we are trying to apply some wetting agents to improve the hydrophobicity and see if they improve the infiltration. And we also tested some crop biologicals, if they holds the potential to improve the infiltration in the soil. And we are also trying to cop up around some of the conservation practices like cover cropping, no-till practices. So if we can find all different kind of ways how we can improve the infiltration in the soil.
What kinds of tools are you using, tools, sensors, instruments to get at and measure the impact of that kind of infiltration, or trying to see changes in that?
Yeah. So we're using Saturos to get the field saturated hydraulic conductivity data for all the different amendments we have. But we are also trying to compare it with the lab analysis. Like we are trying to use a KSAT and a HyProp to get a picture what exactly it looks in a field and also what exactly it looks in lab conditions.
I was going to ask, actually, along with that, we've had some discussions on the podcast about field versus lab instrumentation and how they compare, and any findings, any insights onto how that's worked for you. And one question along that, do you prefer field or versus lab work? And then how do those results compare? How do you work? I guess, how do you intertwine both of those results?
For me, I would say I love more field work because It's complicated for me to work around lab with all the sophisticated instrumentation with all the lab instrument. But in field, we kind of get a exact field condition like for the infiltration or any other parameters. In field, there are a lot of different variables like macropores.
Right.
We got earthworms in there, so they can affect all of the different condition. But we also do need lab analysis. If we are applying some amendment in field, that amendment is gonna show effect along with all other different aspect of the soil. But in lab, we can exactly see how those amendments are affecting in the lab condition without having any issues with all the other parameters in the soil. But it's a good combination. We need both of them together to get a clear picture out of it.
Right. So one of the highlights of your work is the use and application of the soil moisture-based evapotranspiration or SMET model for estimating actual evapotranspiration. So why did you choose to go that route as opposed to using traditional ET models like with FAO 56 or even eddy covariance towers or other things like that?
For us, it's a more of like the kind of research setting experiment we had. So we have a water optimization trials running in from 2019 and I got involved in it in 2023. And in that trial, we are trying to test all different ways how we can optimize the water. Like we are testing 4 different irrigation technologies like LIPA, LISA, LINA, MISA, which are like low elevation, mid elevation. We are also testing some of the irrigation levels like 100% irrigation, cutting back of 75, 50, targeting the irrigation. We're also testing some of the different crops like alfalfa, corn, small grain forage, and all alternative crops like sorghum Sudan, teff, and all different kind of crops. Along with that, we have a drought tolerant genetics of the crops. We also have a no-till practices, conservation practices, and cover cropping. So it's a whole combination of all different treatments. Area of each treatment doesn't allow us to use all different usually available models we have, like with the eddy covariance, with the Penman Monteith, with the remote sensing tools like OpenET or with the lysimeter. It wasn't affordable for us to do a research in that big of experiments settings. We tried to find a way how we can estimate ET. So we are using soil moisture based evapotranspiration model, also called SMET model. So in the model, it's usually based on the basic principles of the ET. So it's usually cover water balance method and also the crop coefficient. And for this model, we just need soil moisture sensors in the soil, in the crop root zone, and we need a reference evapotranspiration from the nearest weather station. So that's all we need for the actual evapotranspiration calculations or estimations. So that's all we needed to estimate actual evapotranspiration. So that's how we get into like, we're going to be using some SMET model.
Got it. You mentioned all the different parameters. So you're trying to break it down to, you said, basic principles of the model. Again, what other types of instrumentation are you using? So you're trying to find the nearest weather station and pull data from that. Do you have weather stations right there on the field, or is it something that's somewhat more a bit farther away? What are you using there?
So with the methodology, it's basically it mostly follows around the depletion of soil moisture. So most of the methodology revolve around the depletion.
Okay.
So revolve around the soil moisture sensors. And a part of it is around reference evapotranspiration. So we are collecting it from the nearest weather station of each site we have. So we are trying to using those ones.
Actually, I wanted to ask really quickly, is where are your test sites located? Is it there within the state of Utah? Is it in one particular area? Or are you in different areas within the state?
For the ET, most of the sites are in Utah. One of them is in Vernal, east of Utah, and one of it is in south of Utah, Cedar City.
How's the soil there in those cases? Because you've talked about needing to add soil amendments, and that's part of, that's one of the main portions of your research. Can you explain a little bit about the differing environments and how they differ, how they're the same there?
With our research, we got a pretty interesting weather condition during our research study. So during 2022, when we did started estimations, it was one of the most driest year in the history of Utah. So, and we also got one of the most wettest, not most, but one of the wettest year in 2023. So we kind of be able to capture a dry and a wet year, and also on a different types of soils.
With the research that you've done and in your test plots and looking at soil and water infiltration and ET, what are some of the results that you've seen so far? And along with that, has anything been surprising to you in what you've seen?
We got a pretty interesting results with the ET models. So we found out like if we are irrigating with low elevation sprinkler technologies compared to the mid elevation, there's improvement in water use efficiency in the system. We also got results with the drought tolerant genetics of alfalfa. They do improve water use efficiency of the system. But with the conservation practices like tillage or cover cropping, they need a transition period. So because of that, we have a bit less crop stand in no-till treatments, but after a certain transition period, we hope it's gonna lower evapotranspiration period. But we also see a potential in deficit irrigation to improve the evapotranspiration during drought years.
Okay. All right. Interesting. With this measuring the soil moisture, you mentioned using the Satro and lab equipment like the KSAT and HiProp. Are you using other soil moisture sensors in trying to formulate or add data to the parameters of the ET model?
With the ET, it's simple. Like we just need a soil moisture sensor. So because most of the studies, farmer usually have a soil moisture sensor.
Right.
So they can just easily estimate the ET from that. So that was the main motive, like make a simplified model which can be used.
Okay.
But that was with the developers. So
Right.
yeah, they had that goal in their mind at that time.
Okay. All right.
But now when we are trying to do deep percolation in groundwater, then it's going to be.
We'll come back to that. I want to talk about getting and trying to have actual farmers and growers apply the model, and that's a whole other story. So we'll get into that. So you've also looked at deep percolation and groundwater recharge, which are often difficult to measure accurately. How have you approached modeling those processes, and what kinds of impacts would this have on long-term water use efficiency and sustainability?
Yeah. Soil hydraulics is one of the most complex system we have ever studied. As water moves beyond the crop root zone, we can't accurately estimate. There have been different models to estimate deep percolation in different ways, but there's a question how much accuracy of each model is. So we are trying to use a different approach like water, salt, and biomass balance model. So we're going to be using a water, salt, biomass balance model. And this model is basically trying to capture, like when we apply irrigation water, a fertilizer, they all contain salt. And those salt move down with the application of irrigation. And we usually calculate that in terms of leaching fraction, that is electrical conductivity in the irrigation water with the drainage water. But what we usually miss in that part, like we do say plant doesn't uptake water, but in reality, plants also uptake water.
In measuring this deep percolation, so you talked about how it's difficult once we get past the root zone and deeper down, it's difficult to see, quote unquote, see what the water is doing with the soil and how it's moving. What depths are you using? What depths are you trying to gauge and measure at?
Yeah. So we are trying to get below the crop root zone. That's the main goal. So we are installing sensors at 120 centimeter, 150 and 180. That's pretty deep with all the crop rooting zones. And we are installing Teros 12s so we can extract the volumetric and EC data also. So we kind of need both of them for our estimations.
Right. You said you're looking at lots of different crop types, right? And varieties. And so I mean, you'll have some that might only have a root zone of a couple inches or centimeters, and then others like with alfalfa that are going way down there. What differences did you see in between those crop types, between how the roots or the plant type affected the deep percolation?
So far, we are in the starting phase of the project.
Okay.
So yeah, we are just installed the sensor and we are starting looking at the data, and we'll see how it looks for different crops and different climatic conditions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second part of that, when we're talking about deep percolation, then is groundwater recharge, and I know that's a big deal also there in Utah as well, and in dealing with aquifer depletion, and especially with all of the irrigation, with people dropping wells and pulling that water out. So you talked about how the vast majority of the water use in Utah is from agriculture. Can you talk a little bit more about your research into groundwater recharge in that case?
Yeah. When we install the sensor below the crop root zone, we are just grabbing the data with the volumetric water content. We are like, what if we install a metric potential sensor along with it? And if we install both of them together at different depths, and we can kind of get a drying period out of it, like when moisture is depleting in the soil. And after extracting the depletion, and we can just make a retention curves out of it at different depths. And if we get a different retention curves, we can just fit in a Van Newton model or different models, and we can find out which model we want to use to calculate the unsaturated hydraulic conductivity. If we get an unsaturated hydraulic conductivity, we can easily use the Darcy-Buckingham law to get the flow, or we can use the hydrus to model it, how much flow water is getting into the different aquifer. So it was just a different point connecting in the study to get to the groundwater recharge.
All of those measurements that you're taking, are those there on site, or are you expanding that out to see how water is flowing outside and beyond your test boundaries?
With our kind of research setting, we are mostly focusing on the particular sites, and we are targeting a shallow aquifer and a medium kind of and a deep aquifer. So we can see how water flows in different kind of aquifers and how much they are recharging in different aquifers. And we are just using a soil moisture sensor, so we are just targeting particular sites with those ones. With this, we are just trying to build a model which can be used to estimate. Our main goal is to just build a model, and then we can develop on it, like how we want to use it in different ways. We can use it, and at different places around the world, we can use that model. So.
And I guess this is the benefit of models, is that you can make them as simple or as complex as you need to, right? you do end up with some diminishing returns the more parameters you add to your model. But being able to, like you said, create a model that then not only are you able to use and see work and apply there on site, but then have it relatively simple so that you can use it in different locations. With that model, you're hoping that it would be able to be used in various soil types, various crop types, in various environments.
With all the models, it's usually like how sophisticated and complicated they usually get. So I hope in future, maybe sometime soon, I do want to incorporate machine learning to see how I can simplify all those models, and we can use it in different agriculture settings, or even all the different settings apart from agriculture. So we can just expand the use and reach of the model with the different settings.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask that as well. Is that what new or emerging technologies would you like to use or see used in this particular type of research?
With this kind of setting, like I'm already kind of getting through the soil regime, how soil moisture moves around the soil, and I'm getting the atmospheric condition with the weather station Atmos 41, and so far we are trying to capture or get a yield manually. So I do want to incorporate either cameras in there so we can do a complete soil, plant, atmosphere, complete continuum with all at one place, rather than having different approaches. So we can do a more accurate water balance and see how water is moving in the zone.
with the machine learning that's then on the back end, right? So as you're grabbing all of this data, much more than a human or a team of humans can parse out, and then being able to have that machine learning and to be able to break down and see what patterns emerge and how the parameters of the model play one against each other and all of that. So as part of your research, and we mentioned this in the introduction, is that you are also trying to focus on, I guess, the social aspects of adopting soil moisture sensors. You talked about hoping to have farmers and growers have soil moisture sensors easily accessible that then they can plug in and be able to use the model that you're hoping to develop. What have you learned so far about helping farmers and growers adopt the use of this technology? Any insights or barriers to that adoption that you're seeing so far?
We're trying to cover in the very last aspect of our research is going to be look at how much is the acceptance of different technologies we are using. Even though we are trying to develop different models, different ways to save irrigation water or different ways to model different things, but at the very end, it comes out at the adoption, how much ease it can come with the adoption. So we're going to be trying to conduct a surveys and see what are the complications they see in the adoption of these ones. What are the big questions they come across like while adopting these technologies? What are the drawbacks they feel like in using all those technologies? And that's when it comes with the machine learning, and we can make it more simpler for them and to be used in the future for them. Yeah.
Right. You're going to be sending out surveys. You're going to be talking with these farmers and being able to find out what makes them tick. And because the thing too is that farming, especially in dry, arid, semi-arid regions, is a high risk endeavor, right? Yeah. You have either the reliance on precipitation with dry farming, or in these cases with irrigation. Being able to change relatively quickly, some very obvious benefit to being able to. And I would hope that installing soil moisture sensors would be something that is non-invasive to what they're doing, and would then down the line have a much greater impact, especially if like you're saying with the model, they are only needing to insert a few soil moisture sensors on their land and then being able to incorporate that data to figure out what evapotranspiration is looking like there locally.
Yeah, that's a part of research, like not even research, like with the farming. Farming is most complex. It just doesn't depend on just irrigation. There are all different aspects in the farming. Like they have to focus around all different aspects into the system and then make a decision out of it. So it would improve one aspect of it, but as a whole system, there's need a lot of improvement in all the different aspects.
Right. Yeah. With your background from family farming, whether you were good at it or not, has that helped kind of inform how you work with or hope to work with the farmers in your research projects? Do you feel like you're able to come to them, empathize with them because hey, I see what you're doing and I have maybe some kind of better understanding, as opposed to a researcher who is coming strictly from outside that private or commercial agriculture side of things?
Getting involved in different farms, like small scale and big scale and all different aspects, it feels like there is getting adoption of different technologies and everything. That's a bit of move forward for all these things. But there's always a transition phase. So that transition phase is getting in. So we are hoping we'll probably get more in touch and more easy way of knowing how we can solve that problem and how they can adopt it. And we need to build a way like how we can make a one-click thing. Like they just click on the app and see how much water should they apply. And they should also see how much they have saved. That will motivate them, like how much they are saving and contributing to the society.
Yeah. I guess that'd be true. The currency that's being used in a lot of these locations is water. Yeah. And there's always questions about water rights and water use and where that water is coming from, where it's going. Yeah. And so being able to show that water saved would be, would definitely be key in helping them understand the benefit of using this technology. With all this super interesting research, you caught the eye of Meter Group, and you are one of the inaugural recipients of the Gaylon Campbell Fellowship. So congratulations again.
Thanks.
Can you tell us, first and foremost, how did you learn about the fellowship, what that means to you, and how you heard about the fellowship in the first place, and how that experience has gone for you? What, I guess, maybe detail a little bit about what's all involved with being a Gaylon Campbell Fellow.
It was just a interview thing. Like, I got in touch with Matt, and he offered me into this position and getting involved in this kind of fellowship. Totally different. Like, here in this kind of fellowship, I'm getting experience with the academia, industry aspect also, and getting more into the technicalities, how each instrument works, how all different aspect of the studies work. So I feel like getting both, helping me build more out of and getting more out of research.
All right.
Yeah.
With the fellowship, you have funding for your research, but then you also have the ability to travel around and research. So for instance, you are here at Meter Group for several months conducting research here in the lab. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and being able to move around and work on looking into improving your research practices and measurement techniques and familiarity with tools and instruments?
Yeah, it's totally a different experience for me. Like, mostly all of the ag PhDs in agriculture, we usually focus more on the research aspect, but I'm getting a chance to do a kind of internship in summer. That's a pretty big part of my research. And here I'm learning from a different industrial aspect, learning from different researchers here, along with learning from the academia and getting classes from all different. So it's a complete mixture of good blend of all the different things I'm getting out of my PhD. So it's a totally different experience. And also, like, getting involved in different field installed measurements, and then getting with the borehole instrumentation, which could be a possible application for me in my coming research. So that's a big part of it. So I do enjoy it a lot.
Oh, good. Well, I hope so, because this is a 3-year fellowship. So hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully by the end you're going to be expert in everything that you need to do. Yeah. So the namesake of the fellowship, Dr. Gaylon Campbell, still works here at Meter Group. He is an amazing researcher, has had decades of experience in working in environmental measurements and agriculture specifically as well. How has it been working with him?
Yeah, it's really a great honor for me to working with that big name. So even though we are trying to move into different aspect, but having expertise and deep insight from all of the different aspect of the research, it's been pretty good improvement for me in my research.
Has it been intimidating working with Gaylon?
He works a lot.
He does.
Yeah.
He works a lot. He's still going, and it's amazing. He's still key in many of our research projects here at Meter, and he knows so much about all different aspects of the research and the products that we're developing and all of that.
Yeah.
What specifically has he been helping you with when it comes to your research? Are there particular aspects of your research that you've been reaching out to him for?
Probably mostly with the deep percolation, like the way we are developing, getting the methodology built, and revolving around the EC measurements and everything, and how it's going to move on. So that's going to be a big part of the research. So,
all right. Last questions here. We want to kind of cover looking back on what you've done and looking ahead as well. So with the research that you've done so far, what have you seen to be the most challenging and the most rewarding aspects of the studies and the research and the experience that you've had so far?
There's always a challenges in research, mostly with the ag and all different kind of research. There's always challenges, but we kind of got out of it. So that's the best part. But we still have to work around different weather conditions and all the different measurements, about the instrumentation, how to use it, how to get most out of the data we are collecting, because we are collecting tons of data, but how we gonna be getting most out of it. So that's the main part of it. That's what I'm looking at, like how I can use it more in a future in a different ways.
Do you feel at this point of your research that you have any advice to give other researchers, maybe grad students or early PhDs who are trying to do environmental measurement and research similar to what you're doing?
Not particularly with this research, I would say with all different kind of research, just be patient. That's all we need. Collecting hundreds or thousands of data points in your research and getting revolve around it and doing analysis and then getting to the end point of getting it published. So it's a whole long process, and we need to be patient and trust the process, how it goes. So
yeah, trust the process.
Yep.
That's great. Fun question we like to ask here and there is, if you had unlimited funding to do what you wanted to do, well, let's just focus right now on your PhD. If you had unlimited funding, what would that project look like?
I love that question. Since I'm kind of working around developing different models and looking at the hydraulics and the water retention properties of the soils, and particularly in Utah, I do want to try on a different soil health aspect of the regenerative agriculture and see and how it varies according to different soils, because this one is a real time retention properties and the hydraulics we can see, because we usually try them in a lab, but this would be a great to see all those different movements in soil, how they're acting in a different soils and different regions across the US or across the world in a different ways. So we can kind of say or build a benchmark for what healthy soil looked like exactly. And we can say like, okay, if we're gonna do a no-till practice in Kansas, or we're gonna be applying a compost in Utah or even in California or somewhere in the East, we can kind of find what we should expect from our whole soil health expectation, like what our healthy soil is going to look like. So that would be a pretty good research for me.
Right, right. Actually, there's a question, as you were talking, there was a question that popped up. In your work with farmers here in the United States, particularly in Utah, what differences or similarities have you seen in agricultural practices there versus what you've seen back in India, and particularly maybe in Punjab or elsewhere?
Even in Punjab, we have a kind of similar agriculture practices, but on a smaller scale. Like we have a production system kind of farming. Like we have a Midwest, we usually grow wheat, rice, cotton, and all different kind of crops. It's basically the scale of the agriculture and also the different adoptions in the new technology that is need to be focused more in a different ways. They accept the technology, and even it more depend on a region specific, like what's the priority with both of the agriculture systems we have. So it just depend on the priority we have to focus.
Interesting. Okay.
It's literally a priority. Like if we see in a Punjab, it's mostly like small holding as we as we get into the, but it's the main focus at this moment is like, even though it's mostly the same, like we are running out of groundwater. So that's a big issue in Punjab also. So we are trying to find a different ways how we can save water. So we are just trying a different technologies and all different aspect. Can we reduce the area under rice cultivation, or we can find a different ways, but it all depend on the complex system we already got and the marketing we have to focus. It feels like it's a whole different dilemma, but still it's almost similar.
Right. So did you say that you're growing rice
Wheat
and wheat
cotton,
all in the same region? That seems incredible to me. I don't know. I guess because especially when looking at rice versus wheat, completely different growing and management practices.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like in Punjab, we have a package of practices look for like 30 to 40 different crops in one season. Like we have a different season like Kharif, Rabi, and we have a similar number of crops growing in a Rabi season. So it's a complete system. Like summer, we have a different crops. In winter, we are following with the different crops. But it's a whole complex system, getting maximum out of your crop, because Punjab contributes a large portion into the central food grain storage. So it's a big part of the whole system of the country. So we need to keep up pace with the production system, but also find a way how we can save some water out of it. So
Interesting. Super interesting.
It's really complex.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And especially dealing with small scale farmers, right? Like what you're saying. I mean, here in the United States, we're trending more towards big ag, right? And we have these larger companies so big ag, large land holdings, very similar crops. I don't want to say minimizing crop diversity, but decreasing crop diversity, especially when you have the genetically modified crops that are coming up. And then also with the precision ag. So the very, the high tech equipment. It's very fascinating, but it seems like a different side of agriculture than what you're seeing there in Punjab.
Yeah.
We're closing in on the end of our time. Any final thoughts, Tejinder, from what you'd like to share with our audience about your research and what you hope to do here in the future?
I would say just keep connecting the dots and get into a more productive way so we can save every drop we have. Yeah. By 2035, even in Punjab, we are running out of water, groundwater, and it's more of a challenge, like how we're gonna keep up with the food production. So that's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So
that seems
save every drop.
Save every drop. That's a theme, worldwide, right? And especially when it comes to aquifers and groundwater and all of that. So, all right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you again, Tejinder, for being here and joining us today. It's been a very interesting discussion.
Thanks, Fred. It's been a pleasure for me.
Great. Yeah. And if you in the audience have any questions about this topic or want to hear more, feel free to contact us at metergroup.com or reach out to us on X at meter_ENV. And you can also view the full transcript from today in the podcast description. That's all for now, and we'll catch you next time on We Measure the World.